My mother's words still echo in my memory. Seraphina, you will never own a car. You cannot even manage your own finances. She said this while signing over my late father's trucking company to my younger brother Marcus, dismissing my business degree as worthless paper. What she did not know was that I had already built a $2.8 billion transportation empire under a different name, and I was about to buy the very company she just gave away. The family meeting that would change everything was tomorrow. Before we dive into how I got my revenge, tell me where you are watching from today. If this story of family betrayal and ultimate justice resonates with you, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because you will not believe what happens when entitled family members underestimate the wrong daughter. Trust me, the satisfaction you will feel when karma finally strikes will be worth every second of this wild ride. Growing up in the Morrison household meant living under the shadow of golden boy Marcus. While I excelled academically, earning my MBA from Wharton at 24, my mother Delilah consistently praised Marcus for his natural business instincts, despite his string of failed ventures. My father Robert had built Morrison Logistics from a single truck into a regional powerhouse, but Delilah never believed I deserved a place in that legacy. The funeral was barely over when Delilah announced her decision. "Marcus will inherit the company," she declared, not even looking at me. "Seraphina, your father left you the house in Portland. That should be sufficient." Marcus smirked from across the mahogany table, already calculating his newfound wealth. The house in Portland was worth maybe $400,000. The trucking company was valued at $12 million. What they did not know was that 6 years earlier, I had started Phoenix Transport Solutions under my middle name, Seraphina Vale. While they dismissed my internships and entry-level positions as playing office, I was systematically building relationships with major shipping contracts they had lost or never pursued. Every slight, every dismissive comment, every time Delilah chose Marcus over me, despite his incompetence, I channeled that energy into expanding my empire. The real betrayal came when I discovered Marcus and Delilah had been embezzling from Morrison Logistics for 3 years. During my father's illness, when he was too weak to oversee daily operations, they had created phantom expenses and diverted funds into personal accounts. Shell companies with names like Maintenance Solutions LLC and Fleet Services Group were actually fronts for their BMW payments, Delilah's spa retreats, and Marcus's gambling debts. I found the evidence while helping clear out my father's office, something they had conveniently left to me while they celebrated at an expensive restaurant. Hidden in his desk were bank statements showing irregular transfers, invoices for services never rendered, and correspondence with accountants questioning unusual expenses. My father had been investigating the discrepancies before he died, but Delilah and Marcus convinced everyone he was confused due to his medication. The fraudulent transactions totaled over $800,000. They had literally stolen from a dying man while positioning themselves as his caretakers. Marcus had even convinced my father to sign a document giving him power of attorney, claiming it was for medical decisions only. Instead, he used it to authorize the theft of company funds. But the financial manipulation was only part of their scheme. I discovered they had been sabotaging potential contracts I had brought to the company years earlier. When I arranged a meeting with Pacific Distributors, a massive account worth millions annually, Marcus deliberately missed the appointment and then told my father I had given them incorrect information. When Harbor Freight expressed interest in our services, Delilah called them to say I was no longer with the company and convinced them to work with a competitor. They had systematically undermined every contribution I made, every client I attracted, every improvement I suggested. Then they used my apparent failures to justify excluding me from the inheritance. The contempt in Delilah's voice when she said I could not manage my own finances was particularly galling, considering she had been stealing from the company I was trying to help grow. The most painful discovery was a recorded conversation on my father's phone from his final weeks. Marcus and Delilah were discussing how to handle the Seraphina problem after he died. "She thinks she deserves an equal share." Marcus laughed. Dad always had a soft spot for her academic achievements, but this is a real business, not some classroom theory. Delilah's response chilled me. Once Robert is gone, we can finally run things properly. Seraphina never understood this industry anyway. She can take her degrees and find some corporate job where they appreciate that kind of thing. They were not just stealing money. They were stealing my father's legacy and my rightful place in it. Every dismissive comment every time they chose Marcus, despite his obvious incompetence, every family dinner where they discussed business plans without including me, it all made sense now. This was never about ability or qualifications. This was about greed and favoritism, plain and simple. As I sat in my father's empty office, surrounded by evidence of their betrayal, I realized they had made a critical miscalculation. They assumed I was the powerless daughter who would accept their scraps gracefully. They had no idea that Phoenix Transport Solutions had contracts with Amazon, Walmart, and 17 other major retailers. They did not know I employed over 4,000 people across 6 states, or that my company's revenue last quarter exceeded $50 million. While they were stealing $800,000 from Morrison Logistics, I was building an empire that could buy and sell their little operation dozens of times over. The irony was exquisite. They had excluded me from a $12 million company while I owned assets worth $2.8 billion. But this was not just about money anymore. This was about justice for my father, who died believing his son and wife were trustworthy stewards of his life's work. This was about exposing their lies, their theft, and their complete lack of respect for everything he had built. They wanted to play games with family loyalty and blood relations. Fine. But they picked the wrong daughter to underestimate. The family meeting was tomorrow, and they expected me to quietly accept their decision and fade into the background. Instead, I was about to show them exactly what happens when you steal from someone who has spent 6 years learning how to win at business while you were learning how to cheat. The Morrison name might be on the trucks, but Seraphina Vale was about to teach them that respect is earned, not inherited. I arrived at the family meeting with a leather portfolio and a calm expression that masked the storm brewing inside me. The conference room at Morrison Logistics felt smaller than I remembered, probably because I was used to boardrooms in Manhattan skyscrapers now. Delilah sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court, while Marcus lounged in what used to be my father's chair, already acting like he owned everything. "Seraphina, we are glad you could make it," Delilah said with that condescending tone I knew so well. "We need to discuss the transition process and make sure you understand your role going forward." "My role?" I asked, opening my portfolio. "I am curious about that, but first, I think we should address some irregularities in the company finances." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "What irregularities? Everything has been handled properly." I slid copies of bank statements across the table. "These irregularities, Maintenance Solutions, LLC, for instance. 8 payments totaling $67,000 to a company that does not exist. The address listed is a vacant lot in Newark." Delilah's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "Those are legitimate business expenses. You would not understand the complexities involved." "You are right, I might not understand trucking maintenance," I replied, pulling out more documents. "But I do understand shell companies' phantom invoices and embezzlement. Fleet Services Group received $94,000 for consulting services last year. The only problem is their business license was never activated, and the bank account belongs to Marcus." The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus tried to bluster his way through it. "You are making accusations you cannot prove. Those are legitimate vendors." "Really?" "Because I called them yesterday. Maintenance Solutions LLC has a disconnected phone number. Fleet Services Group does not answer their emails. But here is what I found interesting." I pulled out a photograph. "This is Marcus's BMW, the one purchased with a check from Fleet Services Group for $38,000. The dealer was very helpful when I explained I was conducting due diligence on a potential business partner." Delilah stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You are being paranoid and vindictive because you are upset about the inheritance. Sit down, Mother, I said quietly, using a tone that made her freeze. I am not finished. You see, while you two were stealing from a dying man, I was building something extraordinary. Something you never bothered to notice because you were too busy counting stolen money. I opened my laptop and turned it toward them. The Phoenix Transport Solutions homepage filled the screen, showing our corporate headquarters in Chicago. Phoenix Transport Solutions, founded 6 years ago. Current valuation $2.8 billion. Annual revenue $612 million. Number of employees 4,237. Marcus leaned forward, squinting at the screen. What does some random company have to do with anything? Look at the founder and CEO, I said, pointing to my professional headshot. Seraphina Vale Morrison. That random company is mine, Marcus. While you were failing at every business venture Dad gave you money for, I was building the largest privately held logistics empire on the West Coast. The color drained from both their faces as the truth sank in. Delilah sank back into her chair like she had been physically struck. That is impossible. You work in an office somewhere. You drive a Honda. I drive a Honda because I choose to. I live modestly because I learned the value of money from watching Dad build this company truck by truck. Unlike you two, I did not need to steal to afford luxury cars. I pulled out another document. This is a purchase agreement for Morrison Logistics. Phoenix Transport is acquiring your company for $15 million, $3 million above market value. Congratulations, you will both be rich. Marcus found his voice first. You cannot do this. We own this company now. It belongs to us. Actually, you do not. I slid another paper across the table. This is a court order freezing all assets of Morrison Logistics pending investigation of financial irregularities. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit is very interested in your creative accounting practices. Stealing from a family business is still theft, even when you are related to the owner. Delilah's hands shook as she picked up the court documents. You called the FBI on your own family. I called the FBI on thieves who stole from my father while he was dying. The fact that you happen to share DNA with me does not give you immunity from consequences. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the truck yard, where my father had spent 40 years building his dream. Dad always said this business was about trust. Drivers trust us to pay them fairly. Customers trust us to deliver their goods safely. Partners trust us to honor our agreements. You violated every principle he stood for. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. We are your family. You cannot destroy us like this. I am not destroying you, I replied calmly. I am exposing you. There is a difference. You destroyed yourselves the moment you decided to steal from a man who trusted you with his life's work. I gathered my documents and closed the laptop. Here's what happens next. The FBI will complete their investigation. You will both face charges for embezzlement, wire fraud, and elder financial abuse. Morrison Logistics will be acquired by Phoenix Transport, and every employee will keep their job with better benefits and higher wages. The Morrison name will continue, but under management that actually honors what it represents. Delilah was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Seraphina, please, we can work this out. We can pay back the money. You do not have to ruin us. $800,000 plus interest and penalties. But this was never about the money, Mother. This was about respect, about recognizing that your daughter was not the failure you convinced yourselves she was, about justice for a man who deserved better from his family. I walked toward the door, then turned back one final time. Oh, and Marcus, about that car comment. I do not just own cars. I own the company that ships them from Detroit to dealerships across the country. When you said I would never own a car, you were sitting in an office that coordinates transportation for 60,000 vehicles annually. The irony would be funny if it were not so pathetic. As I left them sitting in stunned silence, I felt something I had not experienced in years around my family peace. The truth was finally out, and justice was finally coming. But this was only the beginning. They had no idea what resources I had at my disposal, or how many people were about to help me ensure they faced real consequences for their actions. The family meeting was over, but the reckoning had just begun. The FBI investigation moved faster than I expected, thanks to Agent Rebecca Santos, a woman whose reputation for dismantling corporate fraud schemes was legendary in financial circles. When I first contacted her office, I assumed it would take weeks to get a meeting. Instead, she called me personally within 2 hours. Ms. Morrison, your case involves several federal crimes we have been tracking in regional businesses, Agent Santos explained during our first meeting at the Chicago FBI field office. Elder financial abuse combined with interstate commerce violations makes this a priority investigation. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that reminded me of my most successful executives. We have been building cases against family businesses that exploit trust relationships for financial gain. Your evidence package is the most comprehensive we have seen. What I discovered next changed everything. Morrison Logistics was not their only target. Marcus and Delilah had been running similar schemes against 3 other family businesses in Oregon using the same shell company model and phantom invoices. They were not just thieves, they were serial predators who targeted family-owned operations where financial oversight was often informal and trust-based. Your stepfather was not their first victim, Agent Santos revealed, showing me files on other cases. Pacific Family Trucking lost $200,000 to similar fake maintenance contracts. Cascade Logistics was defrauded of $130,000 before the owner died under suspicious circumstances. We believe your family operates as part of a larger network. The scope of their crimes was staggering, but it also gave me something invaluable: allies who had been victimized the same way I was. Sarah Chen, owner of Pacific Family Trucking, became my first real partner in seeking justice. Her father had built his company the same way mine had, through honest work and community trust. When Marcus and Delilah destroyed, they destroyed more than just a business. They came to us when Dad was in hospice care, Sarah told me over coffee in Portland. Your brother presented himself as a consultant who could help modernize our operations. 6 months later, we discovered $200,000 was missing, and our insurance had been canceled. Dad died believing he had failed the family. Sarah had resources I needed: connections in the local business community and detailed financial records that established a pattern of fraud. More importantly, she had something Marcus and Delilah never expected: a daughter who fought back, instead of accepting defeat quietly. Through Sarah, I met David Kim, whose family's construction company had lost $150,000 to Marcus's equipment leasing scam. David was a forensic accountant who specialized in small business fraud, and he volunteered to help analyze the financial evidence for free. Your brother is sophisticated but not brilliant, David explained as we reviewed bank records in my hotel suite. He uses the same shell company structures and routing patterns for every victim. Once you know the template, finding the money trail becomes simple. David's analysis revealed something crucial: Marcus had not spent all the stolen money. Over $900,000 was sitting in various accounts, hidden behind shell companies, but still traceable through David's forensic techniques. This was not just about punishment anymore. This was about full financial restitution for every family they had victimized. The most unexpected ally came from within my own company. Jennifer Walsh, my head of legal affairs, had been quietly investigating Morrison Logistics for weeks after I mentioned the acquisition. What she discovered made my blood run cold. Seraphina, your mother and brother were planning something bigger, Jennifer said during an emergency video conference. We found communications suggesting they intended to use Morrison Logistics as a base for expanding their fraud operation. They were targeting other transportation companies for hostile takeovers using stolen capital. Jennifer had evidence that Delilah was in contact with other family businesses, presenting herself as a succession planning consultant who helped aging business owners transition control to the next generation. The plan was to replicate their Morrison logistics strategy on a larger scale, systematically looting family businesses across the Pacific Northwest. "They were not just stealing from your father," Jennifer continued. "They were using his company's reputation and relationships to access other victims. This goes far beyond simple embezzlement. This is organized financial predation." The network of allies expanded quickly once word spread through the small business community. Tom Rodriguez, owner of Rodriguez Family Construction, had lost his company to a similar scheme 3 years earlier. Maria Santos, whose family restaurant chain was targeted but escaped before significant damage, provided intelligence about their methods. "They study families for months before making contact," Maria explained during a strategy meeting at my Phoenix transport headquarters. "They identify the weak points, illness, family tension, succession disputes, and exploit them systematically. Your brother approached me right after my divorce, claiming he could help protect the business from my ex-husband's lawyers." Each new ally brought additional evidence and expertise. Tom's connections with local law enforcement helped expedite search warrants. Maria's media contacts ensured the story received appropriate coverage when the time came. David's forensic skills helped recover hidden assets. Sarah's business relationships provided credible witnesses to their fraudulent practices. But the most important ally was completely unexpected: Eleanor Morrison, my father's sister, and a retired federal prosecutor who had been estranged from the family for 15 years after a dispute with Delilah. "I tried to warn Robert about her," Eleanor told me when she flew in from Washington, D.C. after seeing news reports about the investigation. "Delilah was working similar schemes before she married your father. I had evidence of insurance fraud and identity theft, but Robert would not listen. He was too in love to see what she really was." Eleanor brought something invaluable: historical context and legal expertise that transformed our case from simple embezzlement into a pattern of organized crime spanning decades. She had maintained files on Delilah's activities that proved this was not opportunistic theft, but calculated predation. "Your stepmother has been running cons since before you were born," Eleanor explained, showing me police reports and court records from 3 different states. "Marriage fraud, insurance scams, elder financial abuse. She targets vulnerable men with successful businesses and systematically destroys them. Your father was just her most successful long-term project." The alliance we built was not just about seeking justice for our individual cases. We were dismantling an organized criminal enterprise that had destroyed dozens of family businesses and shattered countless lives. The scope was bigger than any of us had initially understood, but so were our resources for fighting back. As we prepared for the next phase of the operation, I felt something I had not experienced since childhood: the power of true family. Not the toxic, manipulative relationships Delilah and Marcus represented, but the chosen family of people who supported each other through crisis and stood together against injustice. We had financial resources, legal expertise, media connections, and most importantly, the moral authority that comes from fighting for something larger than personal revenge. This was about protecting other families from experiencing the devastation we had endured. The meeting in my Chicago boardroom looked like a war council, and in many ways, it was. Sarah, David, Jennifer, Eleanor, Tom, and Maria sat around the polished conference table, each representing different aspects of our collective strength. Charts covered the walls showing financial transactions, shell company structures, and victim timelines. Evidence boxes lined the perimeter containing documents that would expose years of systematic fraud. Phase 1 was exposure, I announced to the group. Phase 2 is total accountability. We are not just stopping Marcus and Delilah. We are dismantling their entire network and recovering everything they stole from every victim. The satisfaction in the room was palpable. These were people who had been hurt, dismissed, and underestimated by predators who thought family relationships provided immunity from consequences. Now we were showing them exactly how wrong that assumption was. But as Eleanor reminded us, criminals like Delilah did not surrender easily. "She will fight back with everything she has," Eleanor warned. "Lies, manipulation, attempts to divide us against each other. She has survived this long by being more ruthless than her victims expected." None of us realized how right Eleanor was, or how close we were to discovering that our most trusted ally was about to become our most dangerous enemy. 3 weeks into the expanded investigation, our alliance felt unbreakable. We had recovered over $1.2 million in stolen assets, identified 17 victim families, and built an ironclad case that would put Marcus and Delilah behind bars for decades. Agent Santos called our evidence package the most comprehensive financial fraud prosecution she had ever seen. Then David Kim destroyed everything. It started with small inconsistencies, bank records that did not quite match his earlier analysis, shell company transactions that mysteriously disappeared from our evidence files, victim testimony that contradicted the financial data he had provided. I initially dismissed these as administrative errors, but Jennifer Walsh noticed a pattern that made my blood run cold. "Seraphina, someone has been feeding information to the defense team," Jennifer told me during an emergency call at midnight. "Marcus and Delilah's lawyers know details about our investigation strategy that we have only shared with the core alliance members. They are preparing counter-arguments for evidence that has not been made public yet." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. After years of family members treating me like I was worthless, I had finally found people who understood my pain and supported my fight for justice. The thought that one of them had been lying to my face while sabotaging everything we worked for was devastating. Eleanor was the one who figured out the truth. As a former federal prosecutor, she recognized the signs of witness tampering and evidence manipulation. "David has access to all our financial analysis," she pointed out during an emergency video conference. "He could alter documents, hide assets, even feed false information to law enforcement without anyone immediately noticing." The confirmation came when Sarah discovered David meeting secretly with Marcus at a restaurant in downtown Portland. She had been driving to her lawyer's office when she spotted them sitting together reviewing documents and shaking hands like old friends. The man who had volunteered to help us for free, who had claimed to be another victim of Marcus's schemes, was actually working with them all along. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded when we confronted David in my hotel conference room. Sarah, Eleanor, Jennifer, and Tom surrounded him while Maria participated via video call from California. David's transformation was chilling. The sympathetic ally who had worked 18-hour days analyzing evidence disappeared, replaced by someone cold and calculating. "Since the beginning," he admitted with a smirk that reminded me of Marcus. "Did you really think it was coincidence that I happened to have the exact expertise you needed, that I volunteered to work for free on a case this complex?" The scope of his betrayal was staggering. David had not just been feeding information to Marcus and Delilah. He had been actively sabotaging our case from within. Bank records had been altered to hide additional stolen funds. Victim testimony had been coached to include inconsistencies that would create reasonable doubt. Evidence had been contaminated or destroyed before it could be properly analyzed. "You people are so naive," David continued, clearly enjoying our shock. "Family businesses are the easiest targets because everyone assumes blood relations mean loyalty. But blood relations also mean easy access to inside information. Marcus has been paying me since before you ever contacted the FBI." Jennifer was recording everything, but I could see her hands shaking with rage. "How much did they pay you to betray families who trusted you?" "More than your little revenge fantasy could ever offer," David replied. "Plus, I get a percentage of everything they recover from the seized assets. Did you really think you could take down an operation this sophisticated without professional help from both sides?" The worst part was realizing how much damage he had already done. 3 victim families had withdrawn from the case after David convinced them their evidence was too weak to succeed. 2 key witnesses had been discredited because of inconsistencies in testimony David had helped them prepare. The FBI's asset seizure had been partially reversed because David provided expert analysis showing some transactions were legitimate. "You destroyed evidence that could have helped dozens of other victims," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "My father died thinking he had failed his family, and you helped the people who killed him escape justice." David shrugged, like we were discussing the weather. "Business is business. Your father built a company worth stealing, so someone was going to steal it. At least this way, everyone gets paid." But his betrayal revealed something crucial about Marcus and Delilah's operation that we had not understood before. They had not just been stealing money. They had been building a network of corrupted professionals who helped them target and destroy family businesses systematically. David was not their only inside man. "How many others are there?" Eleanor demanded, using her prosecutor voice that had intimidated criminals for decades. "Enough," David replied. "Lawyers, accountants, consultants, even some law enforcement contacts. Family businesses are a billion-dollar industry built on trust and informal relationships. We just figured out how to monetize that vulnerability." As security escorted David from the building, I felt like everything we had worked for was crumbling. Our evidence was compromised. Our strategy was exposed. Our trust in each other was shattered. Marcus and Delilah had not just stolen money from family businesses, they had created a criminal enterprise that corrupted the very professionals families relied on for protection. "This is bigger than we thought," Tom said quietly after David was gone. "If they have people like him embedded in multiple cases, how many other families have been destroyed by this network?" The question haunted all of us. Every family business that hired the wrong consultant, every elderly business owner who trusted the wrong lawyer, every succession plan that was sabotaged from within. How many of those were connected to the criminal enterprise we were fighting? But Eleanor reminded us of something important. David's betrayal also proved how desperate Marcus and Delilah had become. "They would not need inside sabotage if our case was weak," she pointed out. "The fact that they corrupted our analyst means they know we have enough evidence to destroy them. They are fighting dirty because they are losing." Still, the emotional impact was devastating. After being betrayed by my mother and brother, finding allies who understood my pain had felt like salvation. Discovering that one of them had been lying from the beginning brought back all the feelings of isolation and distrust I thought I had overcome. "We rebuild," Jennifer said firmly. "We verify every piece of evidence independently. We assume everything David touched is contaminated and start fresh with new analysis. We turn his betrayal into evidence of their desperation and use it to strengthen our case." As I looked around the room at the faces of people who had chosen to stand with me despite this devastating setback, I realized something important. David's betrayal had not destroyed our alliance. It had proven which relationships were real and which were transactions. The people still fighting beside me were not there for money or personal gain. They were there because they believed in justice and refused to let criminals win. But we needed help, and we needed it fast. Marcus and Delilah now knew every detail of our investigation strategy. They had months to prepare their defense and corrupt additional evidence. We needed someone they could not buy, someone they could not intimidate, someone with resources even greater than theirs. Fortunately, I knew exactly who to call. The phone call that changed everything came from an unexpected source, my father's former business partner, Alexander Hayes, who had sold his stake in Morrison Logistics 15 years earlier and built Hayes International Freight into a global empire worth over $8 billion. "Seraphina, I have been following the news coverage of your case," Alexander said when he called my office directly. I think we need to meet immediately. What Marcus and Delilah have been doing affects more than just your family. Alexander flew to Chicago that same day in his private jet, accompanied by a team that made my corporate security look amateur. His lead investigator was Rebecca Stone, a former FBI director who specialized in organized financial crime. His chief counsel was Martin Cross, who had successfully prosecuted 3 major RICO cases against family business fraud rings. Your stepmother and brother are part of something much larger than you realize, Alexander explained as we sat in my boardroom. Hayes International has been tracking family business fraud networks for the past 2 years because they have been targeting our regional partners. The patterns match your case exactly. Rebecca Stone opened a presentation that made our evidence look like amateur hour. Charts showed connections between hundreds of compromised family businesses across 12 states, all linked by shell companies, corrupted consultants, and systematic asset stripping. Marcus and Delilah were not independent operators. They were part of a criminal syndicate that generated over $50 million annually through family business fraud. The network has 3 layers, Rebecca explained. Ground-level operators like your brother and stepmother who identify and infiltrate target families. Mid-level coordinators who provide corrupted professional services like your friend David. And top-level organizers who manage the stolen assets and provide legal protection for the entire operation. The scope was breathtaking and terrifying. David Kim was not a rogue accountant working for Marcus independently. He was part of a network of corrupted professionals who specialized in sabotaging investigations from within. They had similar people embedded in law firms, accounting agencies, even some law enforcement departments. How did you discover all this? Eleanor asked, clearly impressed by the sophistication of their investigation. One of their targets was Hayes International itself, Martin Cross replied. They attempted to infiltrate our succession planning when Alexander's father became ill 3 years ago. They underestimated our internal security and legal resources. Instead of becoming victims, we became hunters. Alexander's resources were staggering. While we had been building our case with volunteer labor and limited budgets, he had been funding a 2-year federal investigation with unlimited financial backing. His team had forensic accountants who made David look like a community college intern, legal experts who understood organized crime law better than most federal prosecutors and investigators, with access to financial records we never knew existed. Your case is the missing piece we needed, Alexander continued. Marcus and Delilah's operation provides the direct connection between ground-level fraud and the top-level organizers. With your evidence and our investigation, we can bring down the entire network. But Alexander brought more than just investigative resources. He brought something even more valuable: immunity from their corruption tactics. Hayes International was too large and too well protected for them to infiltrate or sabotage. Alexander had enough wealth and influence to ensure our case received proper attention from law enforcement agencies that could not be bought or intimidated. Every piece of evidence David contaminated, we can verify independently, Rebecca Stone explained. Every witness he discredited, we can rehabilitate with better testimony. Every asset he helped hide, we can recover through international banking investigations. His betrayal actually helps us because it reveals their methods. The new evidence Alexander's team provided was devastating. Financial records showed Marcus and Delilah had stolen over $3 million from victim families, not the $800,000 we originally calculated. Bank surveillance footage showed Marcus meeting with known organized crime figures who managed the network's stolen assets. Recorded phone conversations revealed Delilah discussing family targets with coordinators in other states. Most importantly, they had something we desperately needed: David Kim's real financial records. While he had been sabotaging our case, Alexander's investigators had been tracking his payments from the criminal network. David had received over $400,000 for his work destroying evidence and discrediting victims. We have him on tax evasion, conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice, Martin Cross explained with satisfaction. David thought he was playing both sides, but he was actually creating evidence of his own crimes every time he took payment for sabotage. The emotional impact of having real allies was overwhelming, after months of fighting with limited resources while being undermined from within. Suddenly, we had unlimited investigative power and legal expertise. Alexander's team treated our victim families with respect and professionalism that restored my faith in the possibility of justice. "Why are you helping us?" Sarah asked during a strategy meeting. "You could have pursued this investigation without involving our alliance." Alexander's answer surprised everyone. "Because family businesses built America and criminal networks like this one are destroying something irreplaceable. Your father spent 40 years building Morrison Logistics through honest work and community relationships. When people like Marcus and Delilah destroy that trust, they damage the foundation of our entire economic system." But there was a personal element too. Alexander's own father had died believing his business partner had betrayed him, not knowing the betrayal was actually sabotage by the same criminal network we were fighting. "I could not save my father from the pain of thinking his partner had stolen from him," Alexander said quietly. "But I can ensure your father's memory is honored by exposing the people who really destroyed his trust." The reinforced case was ironclad. Alexander's team had connected Marcus and Delilah to 17 different victim families and recovered evidence of systematic fraud dating back 8 years. They had identified the top-level organizers and frozen assets in 12 different countries. Most importantly, they had eliminated every avenue for corruption or sabotage that had nearly destroyed our original case. "Phase 3 begins now," Alexander announced during our final strategy meeting. "Total exposure, complete accountability, and dismantling of the entire criminal network. We are not just seeking justice for individual victims anymore. We are protecting every family business in America from this kind of systematic predation." Jennifer Walsh looked at the evidence summary and smiled for the first time in weeks. They picked the wrong family to target. Seraphina did not just build a transportation empire. She built the alliance that is going to destroy them. As we prepared for the final phase of our operation, I realized something profound had happened. The family that had rejected and betrayed me had inadvertently led me to something better, a chosen family of people who shared my values and fought beside me for justice. Alexander, Eleanor, Sarah, Jennifer, Tom, and Maria were not related to me by blood, but they had proven their loyalty through actions when it mattered most. Marcus and Delilah thought they understood family dynamics and how to exploit them for profit. They were about to learn that real family is not about blood relations or inherited loyalty. Real family is about people who stand together when everything is on the line and fight for what is right regardless of the cost. The final confrontation was coming, and this time we held all the advantages. The courtroom was packed when Marcus and Delilah finally faced judgment. Federal prosecutors had built their case using our evidence and Alexander's investigation, resulting in a 67-count indictment that included racketeering, conspiracy, elder abuse, wire fraud, and money laundering. The criminal network they had belonged to was dismantled completely with arrests in 8 states and asset seizures totaling over $90 million. I sat in the front row, flanked by Sarah, Eleanor, Alexander, and the other members of our alliance as the judge read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Marcus received 12 years in federal prison plus full restitution to every victim family. Delilah received 15 years due to her leadership role in the criminal enterprise and her history of similar crimes dating back decades. But the most satisfying moment came during the victim impact statements. Sarah spoke about her father's final months when he believed he had failed his family because of their theft. Tom described losing the construction company his grandfather had built and having to lay off employees who had worked for their family for 20 years. Maria talked about nearly losing her restaurant chain and the devastating impact on her children's college plans. When my turn came, I looked directly at Marcus and Delilah as I spoke. "You stole more than money from our families. You stole trust, pride, and the belief that hard work and honesty matter in business. You made elderly parents die thinking they had failed their children. You destroyed relationships and traditions that took generations to build. Marcus stared at the floor throughout my statement, but Delilah maintained her defiant expression until I revealed the final consequence of their actions. Morrison Logistics has been acquired by Phoenix Transport Solutions and renamed Morrison Phoenix Freight in honor of my father's memory. Every employee received a raise and improved benefits. The company he built will continue to thrive, but under leadership that actually honors his values. The financial restitution was unprecedented. Between asset seizures and criminal penalties, every victim family received full compensation, plus damages for their suffering. Sarah's family got their trucking company back through Phoenix Transport's acquisition and restoration program. Tom was able to rebuild Rodriguez Construction with startup capital from the restitution fund. Maria's restaurants were protected from future targeting through enhanced security consulting provided by Alexander's team. David Kim received 8 years for his role as a corrupted consultant, and his betrayal actually strengthened our case by revealing the network's methods. The other corrupted professionals in their network received similar sentences, sending a clear message that family business fraud would face serious federal prosecution. But the most important outcome was not financial or legal. It was personal growth and the formation of real family bonds that transcended blood relations. The alliance we built during the investigation became a permanent support network for protecting family businesses from similar predators. Alexander established the Hayes Family Business Protection Foundation with a $50 million endowment to provide free security consulting and legal support to family-owned companies. Eleanor came out of retirement to serve as chief counsel, using her prosecutorial expertise to help other victims seek justice. Sarah, Tom, and Maria became regional coordinators who identified potential targets and provided early warning systems for criminal infiltration. My role evolved from victim seeking justice to protector, helping prevent future victimization. Phoenix Transport Solutions developed a family business security division that provides background checks on consultants' financial auditing services and succession planning protection. We share information about known predators and corrupted professionals with law enforcement agencies and business associations nationwide. The personal transformation was even more profound. For 32 years, I had been seeking approval and acceptance from people who saw me as a threat to their criminal enterprise. Learning that their rejection was based on greed rather than my inadequacy was liberating in ways I never expected. You built something they could never understand or destroy, Eleanor told me after the sentencing. Real success is not inherited or stolen. It is earned through integrity, hard work, and treating people with respect. Your father would be incredibly proud of everything you have accomplished. The house in Portland that Delilah had given me as a consolation prize became the headquarters for our victim support network. I converted it into a resource center where other families could access legal advice, financial consulting, and emotional support while fighting similar criminals. The irony was perfect. The token gift they thought would keep me quiet became the foundation for protecting other families from their predatory schemes. Phoenix Transport Solutions continued growing, but with a different focus. Instead of purely seeking profit, we prioritized partnerships with other family-owned businesses and provided preferential contracts to companies that had been victimized by fraud networks. Our employee ownership program ensures that everyone who contributes to our success shares in the benefits, creating the kind of authentic family culture that Marcus and Delilah could never understand. The most unexpected gift was reconnecting with my father's true legacy. Through Alexander's investigation, we discovered dozens of people whose lives had been positively impacted by Robert Morrison's integrity and generosity. Former employees who received help during personal crises, community organizations. He supported quietly young entrepreneurs he mentored without seeking recognition. The real Morrison legacy was not the trucking company, but the values he lived and shared with others. 6 months after the sentencing, we held the first annual Morrison Family Business Protection Conference, bringing together 300 family business owners to share security strategies and support each other against financial predators. The keynote speaker was a surprise agent, Rebecca Santos, who announced that family business fraud prosecutions had increased by 400% since our case, and conviction rates had improved dramatically due to the investigative techniques we had developed. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of people committed to protecting honest family businesses from criminals like Marcus and Delilah, I felt something I had never experienced before. The satisfaction of using my success to serve something greater than personal achievement. My father had always said that true success was measured not by what you accumulated, but by what you contributed to your community. Through fighting for justice and building protections for other families, I had finally understood what he meant. The woman who was told she would never own a car now owned a transportation empire worth over $3 billion. But more importantly, she had used that success to expose criminals, protect victims, and build a network of genuine family relationships based on shared values rather than shared DNA. As I finished my speech and looked out at the faces of people committed to the same values my father had lived by, I realized the greatest revenge was not destroying Marcus and Delilah. The greatest revenge was building something better and using it to ensure they could never hurt another family again. Have you ever experienced betrayal from people who were supposed to protect you? How do you think families should handle situations where blood relations become toxic relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Because I love hearing your perspectives on family loyalty versus personal integrity. If this story of justice and chosen family resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about overcoming family betrayal and building authentic success. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that blood relations do not excuse criminal behavior, and that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you inherit. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to justice. And remember that your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to respond when they show you who they really are. Until next time, keep building the life you deserve with people who truly value you.